be a little bit anti-war is frankly preposterous. So that person's point is, well, hold on, you didn't draw the line against Trump with any of his other warmongering policies, so why would they think you're going to do it this time if he launches a war with Iran? So to lay it out for you in no uncertain terms, in Trump's first term, illegally increased drone strikes 432%. He did a total of 2,243 drone strikes in his first 2 years. And then he got rid of the reporting laws around it, so he didn't have to tell you about the drone strikes he was doing. To put that in perspective, he blew Obama out of the water when it came to drone strikes, and Obama was called the drone president for doing so many drone strikes. So that's just one example. As you know, he kept us in Iraq, he kept us in Afghanistan. There was a 330% increase in civilian deaths in Afghanistan when Trump was in office. He bombed Syria twice. He bombed Somalia. He occupied a third of Syria and bragged about taking the oil, which of course is colossally illegal. He increased the Pentagon budget every single year. He let Israel illegally annex the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory. As I'm sure Dave knows, Trump took $100 million from Miriam Adelson, and the quid pro quo is, you got to let me annex the West Bank. Got to let Israel annex the West Bank. In the first term, he assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian commander who was on the field fighting ISIS. Trump tried to coup Venezuela in the first term. He ripped up the Iran agreement, which was working. According to the UN, according to the IAEA, he armed Saudi Arabia as they did a genocide in Yemen and vetoed a bill to cut off the weapons. He was on the campaign trail this time saying he wants war with Mexico in his second term. He said Biden isn't supporting Israel enough and letting them finish the job. He dropped the Moab, the mother of all bombs, on Afghanistan. He hired John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and Gina Haspel and all these insane neocon warmongers and let them run his foreign policy. His first military raid as president literally killed a young American girl. He pardoned Blackwater war criminals who did the Nisour Square massacre. He signed pro-torture executive orders, and he said we should, quote, take out the families of terrorists. Now that's mostly, with the exception of a handful of things there, that's mostly just the first term. So we already knew this guy, not only is he a warmonger, he's a colossal warmonger. And so I know what Dave would say. He would say, well, look, looking at the options that we had, I just think perhaps Trump would be less pro-war than the Democrat. I think that's what his response would be. And my reaction to that would be, Dave, when Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, literally nobody except like me defended him, right? It was, oh my God, everybody's hair's on fire, 24/7 coverage in the media saying how it's a horrible idea, Republicans attacking him for it relentlessly, including Trump attacking him for it relentlessly. Very few Democrats, you can count them on one hand, the Democrats that went on TV to defend Joe Biden pulling out of Afghanistan. So the implication was, hey, if we have a forever war going on, let it keep going. And don't defend it when somebody pulls out. And yeah, of course, Afghanistan was a house of cards and it collapsed immediately. But it was going to collapse if we pulled out then or if we pulled out fucking 20 years from now. Why waste trillions of dollars more U.S. lives, more civilian lives over there? Just get the fuck out. I was defending him forthrightly, and nobody gave him credit for that. And I to be fair, I don't know what Dave Smith said about it, but that's the thing, right? Is like, so, and I hate Joe Biden's foreign policy broadly. He helped give us the genocide in Gaza by arming Israel. But at the same time, nobody ever gave him credit for pulling out of Afghanistan. Nobody ever gave him credit for nearly eliminating the drone war, right? When Kamala was on the campaign trail in the debate, she defended the Biden withdrawal from Afghanistan. And that's not me saying Kamala is, she's a peacenik or whatever. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you're being honest about the options on the table, there was no doubt Trump was going to be the bigger warmonger. Based on his previous record, based on what Biden and Kamala did in office. And then, of course, as soon as Trump got in there, what happened? Suddenly, he's talking about stealing Greenland. He's talking about stealing Panama. He's saying we're going to make Canada the 51st state, and if they don't agree, we're going to change the border and steal some more of their land and change their water rights. He's bragging about bombing Yemen, bragging about bombing Somalia. Again, the war with Mexico thing. He signed an executive order on day one to give himself the authority to do a war unilaterally in Mexico without needing Congress in any way, shape, or form. Another coup in Venezuela is coming. Just the other day we learned he wants to send our troops to Ecuador because a center-left party might win in the election there. Guys, this isn't a close issue. And so the reason why, Dave, that commenter said that is because they know, this is my guess here, is they know at least some of those things I laid out to you about Trump's record, and they know you didn't draw a red line for any of those things. And so they're like, well, why would he change if Trump invades Iran, right? I mean, this is the question. Shouldn't you already be apologizing since Trump bombed Yemen relentlessly the other day and bragged about it? Shouldn't you already be apologizing when Trump bombed Somalia a few weeks back and again bragged about it? Shouldn't you already be apologizing? If Joe Biden was going around saying, we're going to take Greenland, what do you think Dave Smith would say? If Kamala Harris was saying, we're just going to take Greenland, and they go, we don't want you to, and they go, I don't care, we're going to take it. We have to have it. What would you say if Kamala said that or Joe Biden said that? My guess is you would be unequivocal in your condemnation of it. And with Trump, it's like, well, if he does this other thing, then I'll apologize. Shouldn't you already be apologizing? Shouldn't you already be apologizing over the things that have already happened, not just in his first term, but now also in his second term? So I think that's where that comes from. Now, again, I don't want to be too hard on the guy because the fact of the matter is this is better than 95% of what you're going to get from MAGA. MAGA, like when Trump pretends to be anti-war, they're like, oh yeah, we love that, we're anti-war. And then the second Trump flips and is pro-war, they're like, oh yeah, we love that too, actually, we're pro-war now. And so that, I have less patience for that than I do for Dave Smith, right? Just the people who totally rent their mind out to him. They're in a fucking cult. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? So I don't want to be too hard on him, but what I do want to say is like, why were none of these other things enough for you to say, and I'm not saying you had to vote for Kamala or vote for Biden in 2020. You could have just said, you know what? I'll vote for the Libertarian candidate or I'll sit out completely, right? So that's really the issue, and that's why I think the commenter said that. But I also don't doubt that if Trump invades Iran or bombs Iran, I do think he'll do it. But I guess my point is, you already should have called him out. You already should have apologized because he's gearing up to, without a doubt, be a way bigger warmonger than George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. I don't even think that's debatable at this point, given everything he's saying and what he's already done. All right, so now let's switch gears here. Ron Paul. Ron Paul's back. So the other day he went after Trump for his foreign policy and bombing Yemen. That was based. Now here's Ron Paul, the OG libertarian, and he is going to talk about free speech and what's been going on with that.
Unfortunately, the U.S. government has not always been in accord with this sentiment and has many times in our history been at war with our freedom of speech. From the Alien and Sedition Acts at the beginning of our republic, to Abraham Lincoln's war on speech, to the jailing of anti-war activists during both World War I and II, the political class is all for free speech unless it is threatening to the political class. Recently, a new front has been opened in a war on the free speech, and it is one that Americans must take seriously. On university campuses across the country, students, both American and foreign guests, have taken to protesting U.S. support for Israel's actions in Gaza.
By the way, there's not a single conservative Republican that I've seen make this argument. Ron Paul's a libertarian. Leftists are making this argument all over the place. Ron Paul's a libertarian. He's making this argument now. The right does not give a fuck about pro-Palestine college kids, anti-genocide college kids. They get kicked out of the country. They get sent to an El Salvador slave labor camp. They're in ICE custody in a state that's not their own. They don't give a fuck. They're cheerleading it. They don't care. Trump says this is good. They're like, this is good.
Where tens of thousands of innocent civilians have been killed. The political class in the United States is determined to defend Israel from its critics and has responded to these protests by threatening and blackmailing the universities if they do not crack down on speech the power that be do not like. Both President Biden and Trump have used the power of the U.S. government funding to demand a crackdown on speech they don't like.
All right, look, to be fair, there's an element of truth in that. The Democrats did not in any way, shape, or form object when they were sending in the cops to crack some skulls at the pro-Palestine protests. In fact, many of them supported it. But at the same time, these things are not equal because Mahmoud Khalil was not arrested by ICE and disappeared under the Biden administration. Didn't happen, right? Hundreds of students were not stripped of their residency for fucking thought crimes for being against the carpet bombing of kids under Biden. So you have two thoughts at the same time. Biden and the Democrats' policy on this was not good. In fact, it was bad. But the Republican Trump policy on this are flat out fascist, completely and utterly fascist, completely destroying due process in the Constitution. They are not the same. And we need to be past this era of like, they're roughly equal. No, they're not. No, they're fucking not. No, they're not. The false equivalence lie has to die, and it has to die ASAP.
President Trump recently pooling $400 million in federal funding for Columbia University if they don't silence the protesters. The real scandal is that nearly every U.S. university, both public and private, is government funded in the first place. But for politicians to use the power of the purse to deny students the right to